Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So we have another breakout session for you today. We're going to look at a fantastic case study on the green member experience, and we'll also gain an understanding of the rudiments of materiality assessments. We have a seasoned partnership here with BECU and ImpactARC, so I'm sure we'll be able to talk about practical application too. Very pleased to introduce Gavin Landless, Vice President of Risk Management at Empower Federal Credit Union in Syracuse, New York, an upstater like me, to moderate this panel. Gavin's attended several U.S. summits. Gavin, it's good to see you again. Would you like to introduce us to the rest of your panel here?
I would. Good afternoon, all. Thank you, Patrick, for that. I am delighted to be joined here on stage. It's not really a stage, but never mind. With Monika Kumar from the Sustainability Strategist from ImpactARC, and virtually Dr. Natasha Rivers, who is the Director of Sustainability and Measurement at BECU, which is Boeing Employees Credit Union, in case you were wondering. Delighted to have you both here. Would you like to introduce yourselves for a minute? Tell us something about yourself. Natasha, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the introduction. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. So I've been with BECU for about 5 years, and I'm part of the larger ImpactARC that was newly formed. And some of the accomplishments in this role have been getting a Green Equity Initiative grant program off the ground, securing support for our carbon capture and calculation, and also being a co-founder of our employee resource group focused on environmental sustainability that is at about 280 members right now, employee members right now.
That's amazing. We'll talk a bit more about that later, hopefully, because that's really cool. We just lost your video, Natasha, so hopefully you can still hear us and we can hear you.
I can.
Fantastic. Okay. Monika.
Yeah, thank you, Gavin, and thank you, Natasha. I'm Monika Kumar. I'm representing a group of brilliant women at ImpactARC. We are a sustainable finance advisory firm. That means we are trying to shift capital from ESG or traditional investments to impact investments, and we work with asset owners and asset managers to define what that looks like, the frameworks, the criteria, the verification, the disclosures. And we got introduced to Natasha through a partner at ImpactD, Yolanda, who will be speaking tomorrow at the supply chain session, so don't miss that too. But Natasha had been working with Yolanda on the carbon data collection for a few years, I think. And so we were brought in to really talk about this green member experience, and I'm really excited for us to be here to share that experience with you all.
Fantastic. So we don't have much time and we have a ton to get through. Let's jump right into it. The title of this is Charting Your Green Member Experience. So Natasha, maybe you can kick us off. How do you define the green member experience from BECU's perspective?
So yeah, as Monika mentioned, we've been in partnership with ImpactD Solutions since about 2020. So during the pandemic, they helped me, an individual contributor, sort of start our sustainability journey at BECU. And essentially how we got to this green member experience is that each year we do a new roadmap to figure out how we can continue the conversation and do a little bit more. And we had gone into partnership with another organization to apply for EPA grant dollars. We did not receive that external money, so the hope was how could we build something internally without those dollars. And so that's where Yolanda introduced us to the brilliant team at ImpactARC. And the whole point of it was to just sort of start thinking about how do we get our internal leaders to acknowledge climate risk. How do we as a team, so myself and ImpactARC, identify champions with influence, in terms of decision making, and then also assess what our members want. And from that, that's really just how the feasibility study started, like engaging internal and external stakeholders and just thinking about what we could do or what we could offer after we got that feedback, and then eventually have a space on our .org where a member could have a one-stop shop so they could learn about green lifestyle products and services, what they're currently doing versus what they could do to enhance that space and opportunity. And this is just some examples of what people could use a green lending product or service for that we're hoping to kind of translate onto a .org experience.
Fantastic. And I'm going to ask an out-of-band question because it just came to me and I'm the moderator. Were your members asking for some of that before you started on that journey, or do you feel that it was something you felt the organization felt it needed to do, and then the members kind of came along and realized it was good for them too?
Well, you know, I think on the previous panel was great because when you have someone dedicated to the work, you're constantly thinking, how do I get access to our members? That's not an easy task internally. So I found ways to partner with our marketing teams to put in our brand tracker survey, to survey members that participate in our EV test drive. So it's not that there's an official line of business that says you can, interview these members to engage them on this topic, but I just try to find creative ways that I could gather data on and piggyback on something we already do.
Excellent. Okay.
And from that, learned that members were definitely interested in in having a green lending, a green loan or product with BECU.
Absolutely. So important. Thank you for that. Kind of in parallel, Monika, now that ImpactARC and BECU, they've been working together for a while on this, I want to go back and understand the original drivers that put this in place. So looking across the United States and indeed the world, where did the urgency to act come from? And what's your part in all of that?
Before I answer your question, Gavin, can I just ask the audience, the participants, have you already started on your green member experience, or have you initiated some green loans or products within your credit unions? Can I just see a show of hands? Okay, a smattering. Okay. And how many of you are thinking about it but not there yet? Okay, we just wanted to kind of gauge where folks were as we were talking about this. But if you can go to the next slide, essentially this is the map. Everyone's been talking about the FEMA, the National Risk Index, and this map lays out the social vulnerability, community resilience, and the location of credit unions. And because credit unions really have these assets that are physical, right? You're providing members loans for their homes, for their auto vehicles. The impact of the physical risk due to climate change can be translated into this map. And this one shows BECU very clearly, but you can also get an idea of where UNFCU is, or maybe some of the others that are here present in the room. But essentially, the risk that you're facing from the physical risk, the risk that you're facing from climate change can be translated to the physical assets and to the bottom financial line for your credit unions. But also, if you go to the next slide, it can be translated across the board of your risk management systems. So for market risk, for example, and I got some really cool statistics to talk about this, but market risk, which means changing member preferences. Someone earlier talked about folks getting really anxious about climate change. Yeah, according to a study, 60% of Americans aged between 27 and 45 struggle due to climate anxiety. That includes me. But also, according to a Fannie Mae study in 2023, they found that half of the consumers that were studied said that they were concerned about the possible impact of extreme weather events to their homes. So yes, your members are concerned about this. They are really starting to talk about what they need to do, what they need to address, and their preferences are changing. So if you proactively act and adopt some of these, green member or green products, you can start addressing that, changing that from a risk to an opportunity, which means taking advantage of member preferences. And according to a Fannie Mae study conducted in 2021, it showed that half of the homeowners that were studied at that time, between the ages of 18 and 34, said that they were interested in making energy efficiency improvements or installing solar panels if the cost of these upgrades could be included in their mortgage. there you go. So essentially, there is demand, there is concern. What about regulatory risk? I just wanted to give you another example. Basically, California recently passed 2 legislations which are going to be applicable to any business doing business in California with revenues greater than $1 billion. Will have to start disclosing GHG emissions starting 2026 using 2025 data. We're already at the end of 2024. Right? So this is around the bend. The second legislation is applicable to businesses with revenues above 500 million. They have to report biannually on climate-related risk and mitigation strategies. Now, again, this is applicable starting 2026. So if you have systems ready right now where you're measuring your data, you're able to verify that data, and you're able to get to the disclosure stage as soon as those regulations come on board, you are well ahead of the game. You're well ahead of your competitors, and you're changing those risks into opportunities. You're also addressing the other risk of reputational and operational risk, where you know your members really care about this, and you know that your employees really care about this. I'll leave you with one last stat. A survey of 1,000 employees at large US companies showed that more than 70% wanted to choose to work at a company with a strong environmental agenda. And nearly half of those respondents said that they were willing to accept a smaller salary to work in a company that's environmentally responsible. So you know that you can turn this into opportunities right away. This is where the urgency is. And if you fail to consider long-term investment value drivers, such as environmental social impact, in your investment practices, that is a failure of fiduciary responsibilities. So I want to leave you with that.
So we're not just screaming into the wind anymore. We are absolutely supported by the public out there. It's way beyond that. Natasha, I want to try to give people as many practical takeaways as they can from this session. So can you take us into a bit more detail about how BECU got started on its sustainability journey? I know you've been reporting some emissions data since 2008, I think, which is really impressive. And now there's this ImpactARC relationship. So just tell us a bit more about how you got here, if you can.
Yeah. So I started in 2019, and we did have an executive vice president at the time that was really trying to drive this to kind of be a top-down, not just any random short-term ad hoc initiatives. And so when I was brought on, he really asked me to build out the program. So essentially, I was a one person and I needed a team. And because this was happening during the pandemic, that's how I was introduced to ImpactARC Solutions. And essentially, we recruited volunteers. So what was a 25-member volunteer group that helped collect data or think about, the pillars of profit and people. In Planet, we were able to create sort of short-term and long-term initiatives that could get people on board, whether it was a Duwamish River cleanup and also helping collect data for the carbon footprint calculation. And so essentially, the board of directors started thinking about ESG, and they were wondering, what was our philosophy? How are we tracking this data? Do we have a standard that we're trying to subscribe to, whether it was GRI or SASB? And so then I got in front of our executive management team and said, in order to really take this work seriously, we have to elevate this volunteer team to an employee resource group and also elevate my role, which at the time was a program manager. And so just slowly through 2 or 3 years of conversations and building out the work and building out a team of supporters, we were able to really make a difference. And so that's, again, I've been there 5 years, and these are some of the wins. The Green Equity Grant Program in particular, that's in partnership with our philanthropy and our BECU Foundation. We've gotten out $1.6 million to nonprofits that are really focused on climate action and justice for BIPOC, rural, low-income communities. And so there's a lot of storytelling that hasn't happened around that yet, but we're slowly building up that capacity. And I think with this new Impact Org and Chief Impact Officer that BECU has hired, I think you'll continue to sort of see how we continue to grow our sustainability work, and the stories telling around that should be coming out as well in partnership.
That's great. Storytelling is so important because it makes it real for everybody. If they can understand why it relates to them on a personal level, then suddenly it's completely relevant. So that's fantastic. And kudos for giving yourself a promotion through that process too. That's awesome. I want to get into the weeds with materiality. Monika, maybe you can help us understand what is materiality. Can you define that and then take us through some steps about what a materiality assessment is and how one achieves that?
Yeah, sure. Can we go to the next slide? This is the approach we took with BECU, but before I go there, materiality really is helping prioritize potential environmental, social, governance issues that affect your business and or your business affects those topics, right? So it is about assessing when that issue or impact will occur, what's the likelihood, what's the severity. So there really isn't a methodology out there for determining materiality, but there are standards that provide some support. So for example, AA1000 accountability principles, which is what I like to adopt when I'm talking about materiality, allows you to say, well, as long as you have a methodology that's documented, that's verifiable, that's repeatable and transparent, that is a valid methodology to adopt. So in BECU's situation, we adopted a stakeholder engagement approach. We didn't really need to do materiality because that's not what this project was about. It really was about identifying the pressing issues BECU should consider when designing a green member experience. And so for that, we started with the context within which BECU works, right? So what happens in the Pacific Northwest is very different from what happens in the Northeast here. And what we were, where we first started was to say, what is the political priorities? What are the economic priorities, environmental, legal, social priorities in that region? We then went and spoke to key stakeholder partners that Natasha and team identified to figure out what the demand pivots were, I guess, is a way to say it. So, for example, housing crisis was front of mind for a lot of people. We were talking about air pollution in homes because of the wildfires that are happening over there, right? And that there's a lot of demand for construction, but there really isn't enough monies going towards construction. The other thing that was interesting was someone brought up immigrant banking preferences. And I realized that because as a child of an immigrant, I could not have gone to grad school if I didn't get a scholarship because we were not going to take out a loan. And so that resonated with me, and I understand that. But these type of things were the issues that we had to basically then take in-house to BECU and say, okay, so how do we leverage BECU's strengths and the opportunities it's seeing right now to address these concerns and demands from the community to build a green member experience? Does that fit, and what are the steps that it needs to take to get there? So the roadmap we laid out really was set in the context of that region, of the concerns that the members were facing and the partners were facing, and brought that in-house and said, how does BECU work, and how can we empower really leaders within BECU, including Natasha and others, to move this forward into a green member experience?
So a lot of the process is just learning a lot about the company you're working with, understanding what their priorities are. Yeah. So what did that look like from your perspective, Natasha, as you were working with Monika and she was asking these questions? Who were the stakeholders you had to engage, and how did you work out what those priorities were?
Yeah, great question. And just in terms of doing this work, you already know kind of like who your supporters are, and you already kind of have a small group that you engage with all the time. So obviously facilities, our employee resource group, our marketing team, social impact, which is the team that I currently sit on. And but we needed more. We needed to talk to those that create the products and the services, those that market our product and services. So the internal ones consisted of just those teams, right? It was marketing, it was our product team, it was our lending team, in addition to the facilities and employee resource group. Externally, thanks to Inclusive, I attended their 50th conference. They had a green lending workshop, green lending happy hour. I met other leaders at credit unions that were working to build out the same thing. So just naturally through networking, you're like, oh, I can talk to such and such and such and such who's doing this at XYZ credit union. And of course, Monika and team also had suggestions on who we could reach out to. So we just kind of reached out. We didn't always get a response, but we definitely reached out. And then also, in addition, we looked at other co-ops and other companies like Climate Pledge Arena, for example, who are leading the charge as well, to try to get information from them. So it really was creating a list internally and adding to that list, and then thinking outside of the box a little bit, not just credit unions, but other organizations and companies that are also building out sustainability efforts in a real way.
Okay, I love the idea of a green happy hour. That's phenomenal. Who came up with that?
You have to talk to Inclusive.
So, I mean, that sounds like one way. How did you get their buy-in? Once you worked out who these people were, how did you get them to come along?
So, and I'll also have Monika add to this, but in that previous slide, we were able to identify basically those with influence in terms of decision making and those that are supporters. And it was really helpful to have that stakeholder map, because even though there may be someone that you think should be in the know or could move it forward, their knowledge of sustainability might be really low. So you have to kind of bring them up to a certain level and sort of get them to become a champion, and then get their buy-in. And so we are basically at the point where we've completed a lot of that. And so this will be shared with our CIO, but there's no official sort of like, okay, we're now bought in and this is going to be our plan for 2025. It's still a lot of conversation, but I feel like over these 6 months, we accumulated a lot of information from those internal, external stakeholders and have a path forward. And I think that was the point of the partnership and how we'll sort of continue the partnership moving forward.
Yeah, I'll add to that briefly. I think that was a very useful exercise, and I've worked in sustainability for decades now. So every time I start a new project, that is one of the exercises that I find very helpful, is to look around you and see who are the folks who have the most influence, right? The folks you need to get on your side so you can move the project forward, and those who are champions who basically have your back. All they need is for you to go and ask them, but they have the knowledge and they're able to move things forward. And then identifying those that are skeptics and need a bit more handholding, like Natasha was saying. So really, internal education of leaders is key. And I'll mention this now because I know the time is right there, but. Basically, one of the slides that we're not going to touch upon right now, but you have access to these slides, is a list of resources where you can get started. And that includes trainings, things you can trainings that you can take yourself, or you can sponsor others within your credit union to help empower them to move this agenda forward.
Fantastic. It's all about getting ownership, right? So people can understand that once they have some semblance of ownership, they realize they're part of the process and part of the solution. Mm-hmm. Then that makes it so much more easy to get that buy-in. We've got to talk about greenwashing and trust a little bit, mostly because it's in the title of this thing, so we better do it. Monika, maybe I can start with you on that one. With your clients, and particularly with BECU, how do you avoid greenwashing issues and keep that trust in what you're doing?
Yeah, transparency. Transparency. That's key. If you are establishing a pathway forward or a goal or making a commitment, make sure that there is clear pathway, right? Like a plan. How are you getting there? If you are underachieving on that plan, be transparent about it. Your stakeholders really care about you being transparent and honest rather than hiding things. So transparency is key in order to avoid greenwashing. There are many guides out there that will allow you to try to avoid and to manage it as a risk. It is definitely a risk management system that you can create around greenwashing. But it does not mean you should avoid establishing those goals or commitments. It just means be transparent about it.
That makes a lot of sense. Natasha, what about from your perspective? Any particular member communications or anything that really seems to have worked at BECU to grow that trust over time?
Yeah, so currently on our .org, we do have our sustainability journey page and green equity page. And we don't really, outside of maybe once a year, we do a big report to our members. It's called the annual report to members. And in there's a sustainability section and our GHG emissions and some of the other work that we're doing. So we just make it clear that what we are committed to, we are at least sharing with our members once a year. And then we update those pages on .org regularly. I think, what Monika's mentioning is that eventually we will want to have targets and goals and get to that point where we want to be held accountable to doing a little bit more. But right now we are very transparent about what we have committed to.
That makes complete sense. Yeah, it's a journey. You can't do everything and boil the ocean in one go here. We're running out of time already. I don't know where it went, but I want to ask you both one more question, I think. What does the future look like? Now that you've got to where you are now, what are the next steps at BECU?
I think for me is supporting the onboarding of our Chief Impact Officer. And currently with our employee resource group, we've got a great new set of leaders that are leading that charge, and we have a stewards program as well. So what that means is that there are people from different departments across the enterprise that are going to be taking on smaller projects to help their departments become more sustainable. So we've talked about AI, pollinator gardens, cleanups on a regular basis, partnerships with nonprofits, et cetera. So the goal is to continue educating, empowering employees, educating and empowering other staff to sort of take on, a particular project or goal. One of the more interesting things is we did have a pilot using recycled ocean plastic for a credit card, and we've engaged sort of that product team, and they came to the conclusion themselves of like, well, instead of having this like one-off, credit product, why don't we just make all of our credit cards out of recycled ocean plastic? That's not an official thing that has been, bought into, but that was an idea after talking to the product team that they were like, well, instead of that, why don't we do this? And so it's just a matter of helping people move from like, oh, well, that's something I'll get to later, to being like, how do I integrate it now? And so I think that's the benefit of having these conversations and building relationships.
That's brilliant. And then it just, every time someone pulls the credit card out of it, they're thinking, oh, sustainable. And it just seeds that message right into everybody's mind a bit more. That's fantastic. Monika, what about you? What happens next in this relationship with BECU?
Yeah, before I answer that, I do want to suggest that you all try out a couple of websites called, one is called mightydeposit.com, and you can see whether your credit union is listed as sustainable on there, or how your competitors or peers are listed. There's green.bank as well, but there are all these websites that are now assessing how banks and credit unions are operating because there's a demand. So if you have that credit card that's recycled plastic in your back pocket, it's most probably people like me who I want to bank with that credit union, So anyways, I wanted to emphasize that. In the future, so you all know that there is this pot of money, right? The Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, right? The $27 billion that is floating outside right now. It needs implementation. And the partners who have won that money are looking for those implementing partners. So find out who they are. I believe Inclusive is here. They're one of the partners, but there are a few others, including Self-Help Credit Union. Go talk to them. Figure out how you can get involved. Secondly, reporting requirements are coming. Figure out whether they apply to you and how you should, get started on that. Lastly, we've developed a sustainability benchmark tool for credit unions. So if you're interested in figuring out where you are on the journey and how you can get started on it, or how much more you can push this forward or prepare for things that are coming down the pipe, just get in touch. We'll be able to walk you through that benchmarking. It's a self-assessment, so really it will take just a few minutes to do. Lastly, like I said, we left you some resources in the PowerPoint. Check those out. See where you can get started on those.
It's fantastic. Natasha and Monika, every time you speak, I have about another 15 questions to ask, but I have to restrain myself. Let's open it up to the room here and to virtual. Any questions?
While people are thinking, I haven't seen anything come in from the chat yet. I'll let Rocky update me if that has changed. But just to confirm, Inclusive is here. In fact, what's Kathy's title? CEO. Kathy Mann will be here tomorrow on a panel. So yes, please do make your way back for that. And I think they've got some other personnel in attendance as well. So share business cards, shake hands, meet some new people, and you will probably end up brushing shoulders with someone at Inclusive who can tell you a lot about the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. Any questions in the room?
And I have a couple if people are too shy. Okay, one thing I want to know, Natasha, is a bit more.
I do have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see the hand.
Okay, so maybe this is not question. I just wanted to give some information. I'm representing mission of Mongolia here at the UN. So first of all, I would like to thank UNFCU for organizing this event. I'm here to share information on International Year of Cooperatives, which might be quite relevant for cooperation with financial credit unions. So as we all know, cooperatives have been playing an important role to sustainable development and empowerment of people worldwide. So with only 17% of the SDGs on target to being achieved, it's important to engage all stakeholders into the implementation. So even the recently adopted Pact for the Future lays out a path for recommitment to international cooperation to achieve a world that is just, equal, and inclusive. In its sixth action, member states committed to invest in people to end poverty, promote universal health coverage, increase access to education and social protection, and improve opportunities for decent work. So we deem that cooperatives are uniquely placed to help countries and communities to achieve these objectives. So my country, Mongolia, has been the main co-sponsor of the General Assembly biennial resolution on the role of cooperatives in social development for several decades, since 1981. And we deem that this resolution, this initiative has been making an important contribution to global cooperative movement through its very first International Year of Cooperatives 2012 and through other activities. So again, on 19th June 2024, UNGA officially proclaimed 2025 as the International Year of Cooperatives under the main co-sponsorship of Mongolia and Kenya. And the resolution was co-sponsored by a wide range of member states representing all regions and diverse regional groups. So we think this initiative is a proof of that the member states recognize the vital role of cooperatives and small businesses in advancing sustainable development, eradicating poverty, and fostering inclusive economic growth. So the theme of the 2025 International Year of Cooperatives is Cooperatives Build a Better World. And cooperatives in their various forms promote the fullest possible participation in the economic and social development of all people. So thus financial cooperatives play a unique role of bringing financial services to many areas that regular commercial banks do not serve, and to many individuals and organizations who are financially excluded. Importantly, they enable other forms of cooperatives to access credit to expand their operations and benefit wider membership. So you will therefore play a key role in the success of the International Year of Cooperatives next year, and we invite you to cooperate with us, member states, to realize International Year's objectives. More importantly, its objective to promote growth and development through strengthening the business support systems for cooperatives, including availability of credit. Moreover, the launch ceremony of the International Year will take place on 25th November this year in New Delhi, India, during the Global Cooperative Conference of the International Cooperative Alliance. So we are looking forward to your support and cooperation in the development of cooperatives worldwide in 2025 and beyond.
2025, the International Year of Cooperatives.
Yes.
That's exciting. Yeah. Thank you for that. Please do connect with me or with Liz Philippe. I would love to put something about that whole initiative on our agenda for next year's summit. And it's on our agenda tomorrow already. Perfect. I should read ahead beyond the moment that I'm in. We did get a question from the chat, so I'm going to pass that to Gavin.
My takeaway on that was cooperatives build a better world. I love that. That's really, really good. So thank you, Mongolia and Kenya, for that. One question from the audience. What advice would you give to small credit unions that face limited employee capacity and resources when trying to get started? No one can relate to that, right? And how can they effectively get started with sustainability projects despite those constraints? Natasha or Monika, who wants to have a stab at that?
Natasha, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can start, and Monika can.
Thank you.
I think, what's interesting about this work is it tends to be one person really driving it. I'm a part of a big credit union, and I don't have a team officially. And so you just have to kind of start talking to people and maybe accumulate a few folks across the org. Facilities is the one that comes to mind. Maybe in your lending or product team as well. And if you start with sort of the three of you, there's a lot of conversation that can happen. If you have capacity for a consultant, maybe that helps you also build some, external knowledge and market research to go along with. But I would say it can start with one, and you can sort of educate yourself, get yourself certified as well, and go to conferences, networking. And there's a lot of external resources now, including those 27 billion that are going to credit unions. So that could actually, come into your credit union, build that capacity that you're sort of, worried about. Monika?
I'd just say, too, I think a big part of it is realizing that you're not alone. It's free to attend the UIS conference virtually. That doesn't take any resources other than just maybe a day or two of your time. There's so many people all trying to swim in the same direction. So really, really good stuff. Monika?
Yeah, one of the findings we found during our chat with the stakeholders for BECU, and Natasha, close your ears, but basically one of the, when we asked them, so, do you do green lending? Do you go out for green loans, or have you asked for a loan? And do you use BECU? And they were like, nope, we go to that other credit union, which is smaller, which is a tiny credit union in the Pacific Northwest. And so, small is mighty, figure out your niche, figure out who your partners are and what they need. And for starting green products, there are tools out there that allow you to start with the basics, like you are giving people are taking loans in for EV, people are taking loans for solar. That's a green product. What do you need to do to just go from people who are doing this anyways to adding that 1 extra % of demand, right? What would it take? So it really is small is mighty. Start with that.
Fantastic. We are at time, but I really want to thank everybody for listening in. Monica and Natasha, you've been both really wonderful to work with, and I know I've learned all sorts of things from this process, so thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Let's hear it
Gavin.
for the panel. Let me extend my thanks as well for that storytelling, those best practices. If you found this conversation stimulating at either of these breakout sessions and you are interested in learning more, maybe shifting yourself along the spectrum from the beginner phase more toward the advanced phase, please do keep in touch with us on these topics or other topics. UIS is constantly working to generate discussion among its network members, to dispense best practices across the network. We will be doing more of this on quarterly network calls in the coming year. Please join us for those. We'll have more details on timing and on topics in January. Keep an eye on our website, uisnetwork.org, for that information.